So a cross-border income trust is an income trust that's established in Canada to raise funds by issuing its units to the public through an IPO. With the funds, it acquires either assets or a company or a business outside of Canada. So really it's not any different than the old income trust, except that the assets have to be outside of Canada. That's fundamentally what the trust is. Now, to do that, there's a whole bunch of plumbing across the border to make sure that from a tax perspective it works. But really, it's very similar to the old trusts that we had that have gone away since the rules changed in 2006, except that the assets have to be outside of Canada. So there are a number of reasons why you would come to Canada to do a cross-border income trust and list it on the TSX. Fundamentally, there's got to be an advantage from a price perspective. So when you have a company, either as a private equity group or an owner of a company or assets, you have a number of options to for liquidity to get, to sell. You can either sell through an M&A transaction or do an IPO. And then if you decide to do an IPO, you have different options around the world to really access the public markets. The reason you would come to Canada through a cross-border income trust is that in some circumstances, you'll get a better value, particularly if you have an asset that is generating cash that you can distribute to unit holders here in Canada. There's a very strong demand for yield-producing products here in Canada. Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that in 2006 we had over $200 billion worth of market cap in income trusts, which of course no longer exist because the rules changed in 2006. Then there's a number of other reasons, probably ancillary reasons, why you would come to Canada. We have, first off, we have very efficient capital markets relative to, let's say, the US. And what I mean by that is to access the capital markets in Canada, you will it'll likely take you 3 months to 4 months for the entire process, assuming a smooth process. And that's actually something that is possible. In the US, you will often spend 3 to 4 months alone just talking to the SEC, the regulators, to get your prospectus approved, never mind preparing your prospectus and then closing the transaction. So it's a lot more expedient and quicker if assuming that everything goes well. So that's another reason. Second reason, other than valuation, is that we have a number of areas where we have a lot of support in the investment community. So we're talking different industries from energy, anything related to energy, where we have strong expertise, strong coverage from the banks, and also the industry is well known. It doesn't mean that these will be restricted in our view to that area. If you take Creus Energy, for instance, although they are energy resellers, really their strength is about marketing. They'd be a lot like Just Energy, and Direct Energy would be sort of the same business that they operate, except it's in the U.S. So really it has nothing to do with oil and gas or the natural gas they sell. It's really about marketing. So we think that there's definitely some room to expand beyond energy. But that being said, there's some natural fits with the TSX where we have expertise, where people understand the industry. So that's another reason that some people may come to Canada, because they'll have a receptive investment community to the business in which they operate. And then I think a number of other reasons is that if your IPO is of a size of between 100 million to 300 million, you may find that in the US, for example, or in London, you won't get that much attention. Whereas in Canada, you could be one of the 4 or 5 biggest IPOs of the year if you use this year as an example, where Argent at 244 million was among the top 3 biggest IPOs this year. So you'll get more attention. Hopefully that'll give you more traction and more liquidity as people look at your company. So these are some of the reasons why you would come to Canada to establish a trust and as an exit strategy.